So Gervonta Davis and Lamont Roach Jr. battle to a controversial 12-round draw. And yeah, anyone who's watched boxing for any length of time, I think you'll probably know that boxing and controversy seem to go hand in hand, like peanut butter and jelly, as the Yanks like to say. And yeah, let's explore this fight and this controversy. I gotta be honest, I didn't really have an eye on this fight purely because I didn't care about it. I've never watched Lamont Roach Jr. before, and Gervonta Davis is a fighter who I have paid attention to. I want to say over a decade now. I've been watching his fights, but recently I've washed my hands of him a little bit because he just doesn't really seem to be willing to go for the most meaningful and competitive fights, and I think that damages boxing. So I can't sponsor someone like that. However, I've seen this controversy and I'm like, you know what? I want to check this out because I want to check it out for myself more so because I'm always a little bit apprehensive to jump on a bandwagon. I mean, I never jump on a bandwagon. Maybe that's the wrong term to use. But when there's a controversy, when there's a trending opinion or a trending view, I like to just hold back a little bit and see for myself, see what's actually unfolded and make my own assessment. Especially because I feel like I have a good idea of how the human mind works. Even regarding something as trivial as boxing, there can be groupthink, there can be, as I say, trending opinions that gather a lot of popularity. And I just feel like when you're privy to how people think sometimes, you just need to take a back step, see everything, and then come up with your own assessment. And I think that's even more so important when I'm going to be presenting my opinion to you guys. So I always want it to be completely unfiltered, but also not influenced by anything else. And yeah, obviously the main controversy is that Gervonta Davis received a lucky decision, a favourable draw, so that he didn't have to take an L on his record, and received favourable treatment within the fight itself. And we see a lot of this, so it's not like it's completely unfounded for this to occur. It happens very often, unfortunately, in boxing. And I've just watched the fight myself. I finished it a couple of minutes ago, and I understand the controversy. To put it short, I think Lamont Roach probably was quite hard done by. I was scoring the fight loosely, and I had him winning 8 rounds to only 4 rounds to Gervonta Davis. And now this wasn't it wasn't an all-action fight. I actually found it to be quite an engaging chess match because both guys were clearly at a very similar skill level. And I say this with a little bit of surprise because, as I say, I'm not that familiar with Lamont Roach Jr. It's a name that I've always seen around, but I've never paid attention to. I've just never been too enthusiastic to seek him out and watch his fights. But in this fight, he showed me that he's a fighter who, even though there's no special effects, there's nothing that immediately jumps out at you and says, oh, that's like a really strong trait he has. Watching him fight, I was like, okay, I see this guy is someone who knows his way around the ring. He's got skills, he's got technique, he's got IQ, very patient, good eye for shots, good eye for countering especially, and is a decent athlete as well. He's not the quickest or the hardest puncher, but there's respectable athleticism there. He's very rarely out of position or off balance, uses his brain well, as I say, and proved to be a very tough night for Gervonta Davis, who, in his own right, is a fighter who, put aside his bizarre and often destructive behaviour. He acts like a shithouse sometimes. Put that aside, in the ring, Gervonta Davis is a very athletic fighter. I'd go as far as saying he's athletically gifted and technically as well. This is a guy who punches really hard. He punches correctly. He's got skills. He can counter. He can lead. And he's often quite exciting, Gervonta Davis. But he had his hands full in this fight because he was in against a very sturdy, skilled, disciplined fighter who wasn't going to be overwhelmed by by Tank's reputation as being a big puncher and being like a vicious knockout artist. And Lamont Roach, I think he really fought quite well. As I say, this was a bit of a chess match. It was quite low volume in throughout the majority of the rounds, and so I can understand how that could potentially contribute to some open-endedness in the scoring. However, I do think Lamont Roach did enough to win. That being said, in the first 4 rounds, I found those very difficult to score. And I remember thinking to myself, if the fight carries on in the same way as these 4 rounds here, these first 4 rounds, I can understand how this could be open to interpretation. But I think that Lamont Roach definitely got into the fight, particularly after the fifth, and then even more so down the stretch, going into the championship rounds. I think his confidence grew even more, even though he was fairly confident from the go. And yeah, he just got into the fight. There were long stretches where he was, I don't know, just seemed to be the ring general. You know, had Gervonta Davis moving around, which Davis can do well. However, it just seemed like Roach was implementing the kind of fight that he wanted a bit more. You know, he was very comfortable coming forward, closing the distance, countered Gervonta Davis very often and very well, considering the speed and the sharpness of Gervonta Davis. It wasn't unusual in this fight to see Roach rolling with a shoulder, countering with a right hand, or pull countering the offense of Gervonta Davis and following up with some combinations. So I think he did a really good job of nullifying Davis, and that's it's not an easy thing to do because Davis has a lot of tools at his disposal, and he's a very dangerous fighter. But Roach, he did it, I think. And so yeah, 8 rounds to 4 on my card to Lamont Roach, and on top of that, we have the controversy from the 9th round where there was this knockdown, which was really quite strange, and this is where it gets really fishy, in my opinion. Because I believe it's 9th round, if memory serves me correctly. We have Lamont Roach Jr. He's just thrown, I believe it was a right hook that lands. Not the most full-blooded shot, but nevertheless it does land on Tank Davis. And then there's a delayed reaction before Tank Davis takes a knee. And then gets a count. But then in the meantime walks over to his corner, gets his face wiped, and then just enters back into the fight when he's ready. And yeah, what the hell's going on here? Because, like, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, if you take a punch and that causes you some level of distress to the point where you take a knee or your gloves touches the canvas, that's a knockdown. And the referee clearly interpreted it as that because he started the count. But then when Gervonta Davis has come back in and started talking to him, I believe, saying that there was something in his eye, because you could see Gervonta Davis dab his eye, and maybe there's some Vaseline in it or something, whatever. The referee has just, given him a stern word, said, if you take a knee, that looks like a knockdown to me. Well, if it looks like a knockdown, it probably is a knockdown, especially when it was so clear to see. Davis took a punch, then there was a delay, and then he took a knee. It's a weird one, because if the referee had, assessed the situation and then addressed the judges and said no knockdown, as we often see referees do, but like, okay, yeah, I don't like that, but at least it's conclusive. But the referee didn't do that. He started the count, stopped the count, spoke to Davis, then the fight carried on. So it's difficult to assess, like, is it factored in, isn't it factored in? Based on my assessment, I'm going to say, yeah, that was a knockdown. Because it doesn't matter what degree a punch causes you stress or hurt or damage, how hurt you are. If you take a punch and as a result you take a knee, that's it. It's a knockdown. And I know there's going to be this thing, oh, what if Tank had something in his eye? Well, there have been other fighters who have been punched and maybe something happens to their eye, maybe something in it, or they have blurred vision or no vision for a moment and they stay on their feet. So, yeah, on my scorecard anyway, it's Lamont Roach Jr., 8 rounds to 4 with a knockdown. So, yeah, it's I think Roach Jr. should have won. And I know there is a lot of Tank fanboys, and I shouldn't care to address them because they're all idiots. They're just as stupid as Tank is himself. So their take really is meaningless. It's invalid. I don't care for it. But I've seen a lot of people say, Lamont, he fought well, but you can't come up against a champion and try steal the belt from them. You have to go and fight them and rip that belt from them. Well, I mean, it's a saying that gets said a lot, and it's a bit cope in my opinion. Most of the time it's used. However, you can flip that on its head in this situation, because you could ask the question of Gervonta Davis: did he defend his belt like a champion? Because for my money, he didn't. You know, let's put scorecards for the aside. If you look at the way Tank fought, there were flashes of impressive stuff, but for the most part, he didn't really do much. There were long stretches where he wasn't throwing punches. When he did throw punches, a lot of them were partially blocked, or they weren't scoring anyway. He really did struggle to land flush. And so I know people are probably going to be questioning Gervonta Davis's power. No, I think he is a legit puncher, but he was in against a guy who couldn't land on flush and like full-blooded punches. But just the way Davis fought, he didn't fight like a champion who was defending his belt. Not at all. And on top of that, I think there were moments where Gervonta Davis actually showed that he's got quite a bit of punk in him. Because obviously there was that knockdown scenario, which I don't like that, because it shows that Tank not only gets favourable treatment to some degree, but he knows he gets favourable treatment and he plays into it, because he just stops a fight at will to go get... Like, you can't do that. Just stop a fight, walk over to your corner, get them to help you out and wipe your face, and then jump in when you're ready. No, I don't like that. That stinks. And there were other moments where he was complaining to the ref, talking, oh, he's done this, he's done that, when nothing untoward was really done. And on top of that, if something was a little bit of a grey area, it'd been something that Tank had done to Roach at a different point of the fight anyway. There was one moment where I remember Tank was complaining about a low blow, which I think it just landed on the crest of his hip, so basically on the waistband, and he was complaining about that. But then he hit Roach Jr. with several shots in the exact same place. So, is it that bad? Because when you do it, nothing gets said. Okay, carry on. But when it happens to you, make a big song and a dance of it and start whining to the referee. And there was another time Roach locked up Davis's arms, so Davis decided to use his right shoulder to just bump Roach's jaw, and Roach hit him in retaliation. Like, yeah, it's a fight. Come on, get on with it. Like, these aren't egregious fouls, but Tank Davis is clearly experiencing some degree of distress. He knows that he has his hands full, and so he's looking to get every kind of opportunity, every kind of break that he can. And I think that just says a lot about his mindset, because he's already getting favourable treatment, but also even though like Lamont Roach wasn't really getting on top of him, but he was just in control, and Tank Davis clearly didn't like that, and just showed himself to be a bit of a punk. And just Tank Davis, we know from his antics outside the ring, he's a man-child. This guy's like a schoolboy, but it seems like it's when a fight's not going his way, that starts to spill out as well, and all of a sudden he's not this devastating puncher and this knockout artist. He's he's a very small and very mentally vulnerable man, and so not good look for him going forward. But that's really my assessment on this one. As I say, I do think it was quite an engaging watch. There was a good display of skill between two quite evenly matched fighters, even though I do think Lamont Roach was a clear winner. But yeah, ultimately, controversy strikes once again in quite a few ways. It's not just the decision; it's the favourable treatment within the fight. And this isn't a good look for Gervonta Davis, I'll be honest. But you know what? I think this is what he needs, and it's probably what he deserves as well, because this is someone who's been shying away from the, really getting involved in meaningful competitive boxing for a while. He's shunned the Saudi shows, doesn't really have much interest getting involved in them. And I think it's because he understands that when you're fighting on those Saudi shows, the likelihood that you're going to get matched very tough is, that's what they want, because that's what sells. And then the likelihood of you losing is goes up exponentially. Gervonta Davis won't be able to carry on hiding in his little corner of the States, doing a little road show, these arenas, fighting on pay-per-view. Because this fight was, what, a $75 pay-per-view against Lamont Roach, who Clearly an effective fighter, a good fighter. Respect to him, but unheralded. And I don't think many people gave him that much of a chance, not from what I saw. Um, so yeah, not a good look for Gervonta Davis, but a bit of something he might need, something he deserves. So that's just my take. I'm going to stop waffling now. What did you make of this? What did you make of the fight, the performances of both men, and the ever-present controversy that us boxing fans always have to vent about? So yeah, leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you. For now, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next video.